We've been getting coloured water through the bath since August. It's been reported. Everybody's got it in their books. Even Scots, Archie, and all your big noises. So who can I go to? Who else can I go to? I said I was getting a sanitary in about 3 months ago. Know what you said? Just do it. That's the word I go off of Scotland now. Just do it. So who the hell can you go to?
I get very angry with people who set themselves up as speaking for the less articulate. The people of Downing Street are very articulate and they have very powerful things to say and very important things to say. The trouble is that there is a great reluctance on the part of the other community, the included as opposed to the excluded people, to hear what the people of Downing Street are saying.
This is Downing Street in Lilybank in the East End of Glasgow. And this is where Mrs. K. Carmichael lived for nearly 3 months incognito in the guise of an impoverished widow on supplementary benefit of £10.90 a week. In real life, she's one of the most eminent sociologists in Britain. Senior lecturer in sociology at Glasgow University, deputy chairman of the Supplementary Benefits Commission, and one-time member of Harold Wilson's celebrated think tank at number 10 Downing Street. Well, she came to live here at number 90 Downing Street because she wanted to experience for herself just what it was like to live in a deprived area on social security. And one of the things that made the most profound impression on her was to discover the sheer difficulty that people who are officially categorized as being poor have in persuading others to pay reasonable heed to their needs and problems. And she herself experienced the sense of frustrated anger and resentment that begins to build up when officialdom simply turns a deaf ear when something goes wrong.
Now, I think I understand more of, for example, the way people go into factors offices, social security offices, and make a thorough nuisance of themselves. Because what they have discovered is that in that world, it's the only way you can get anything done. I discovered feelings of violence in myself. I was so angry sometimes. I mean, I can't tell you the kind of frustration.
Ironically, while K. Carmichael was living here at Downing Street, the 534 homes of the Lilybank scheme were being modernised at a cost of some £2 million, about £4,000 a house. Lilybank had originally blossomed out of the squalor of the 1930s depression as an act of faith in the future. But for years the scheme had been going downhill. All but a handful of the houses were now officially categorised as H, the lowest of Glasgow's categories for council house estates in terms of accommodation, amenities and area. The Lilybankers had learnt to live with the familiar chaos of the streets and to keep it at arm's length, but now, in the name of modernisation, chaos moved into their own homes. And it was this that spurred the people of Lilybank to try to make their voice heard as a community. This is a story of their attempt to do precisely that.
It's a classic situation, you know. The Lilybankers had long become resigned to the kind of condition that most other people wouldn't like to have to put up with. But the moment they were told that things would improve, that changed everything. For the first time, expectation was aroused. But when that expectation wasn't fulfilled, indeed when it was signally disappointed, it led to a new sense of personal frustration that provoked them into action of a kind that lack of expectation had never done. It provoked, in the first instance, a flood of complaints. complaints against the local authority, against cubits or contractors, against tradesmen of all kinds, against the house letting office, against the police, against everybody, against society. And as the volume of complaints increased in intensity and bitterness, one or two of the old-time residents of Lilybank here got together about a year ago and decided to form a Lilybank Tenants Association.
The Waynes have got not nowhere to go, they've no jobs.
Willie Forsyth, who worked at the time for Cubits as a labourer, became their chairman.
The first thing they gave us...
The secretary was Mrs. Oakes. It was her first community job. Their treasurer was Lizzie McGrattan, who was raised in Lilybank. A woman of formidable experience who had lost a son in a stabbing outside the Celtic Social Club at nearby Parkhead. Their vice-chairman was the forceful Mrs. Betty Kane.
So if you like a place, you're trying to make it better, aren't you? You're not trying to deteriorate it, you're trying to make it better if you like the place.
They called their first public meeting at Quarry Bray School, just over the Tollcross Road. It would give the Lilybankers a chance to air their views and have their complaints answered on the spot by people who could do something about them.
My name is Brownlee, Assistant Chief Architect with the District Council.
Hooray! Big clap for that.
My name is Main.
Oh, Mr. Mainford, Clive House.
Clive House.
Clive House, in fact, controls house letting in Glasgow.
No, because we never see you.
Right.
Do it that way.
Right. Now, of course, you recognise both your council. I've got the prospective candidate for the area, Mr. Marshall, and Councillor Baird. I'd like to hear, let's hear it.
Yes, we'll get 90 point here.
The area house letting officer was also there, as was the public relations officer whom the city had sent to live in Lilybank during the modernisation. The main building contractors, Cubits, sent a group of observers who sat silently at the back of the hall. At this meeting, the pent-up frustration came to the surface, and the dam gates of complaint began to break.
I've a bathroom suite put in there, and I've got to empty it out of a pail before the water will go away.
Now, some people have nice wee gardens going about there, and the first thing when they work and move in, rather than carry the rubbish down the stair, they smash all the windows. Now, everybody in here, and thousands of us like us, we pay for these panes of glass, and everything's smashed. Now, I can't understand this. They blame vandalism for things like that, but to me, it's a worker that does this. And that means your joiner and your plumber and everybody that works in these houses. It's a big and damn disgrace.
They took down a false wall in my kitchenette and left all the plaster broken. And the clerk who works in the Docity to pass it as fit for habitation. I've got windows you never saw anything like in your life. I've got windows that I had to get another man in to put brackets in. The windows don't fit, they're not mowing. I've now got painters in. I got them in today. They're starting to redecorate my house. What do you think they're going to do first thing tomorrow morning? They're going to start painting windows that are not suited. No. This is a fact. The painters are round the back court and I spoke to them. I says, no, look, lads, it's rather ludicrous, I says, to start painting windows that are not fitted to the windows. He says, well, honestly, Jock, he says, I'm only here to paint windows, he says, and windows, irrespective of what they are, he says, they're still windows and I've got to paint them. It's bloody ludicrous. It's ludicrous, to say the least. You say Cubits is under contract to do a job. Well, by God, if he can't do a half-decent job, he shouldn't be in bloody business.
Well, I better not clap too loud because I'm working with him. You know, I might be paid off tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Our footpaths and our back courts is going to be fixed. And our gardens. They're an utter disgrace. They're worse than black Calvin. And when our repairs is going to be done in our house, not promises, but action.
With regard to the back courts, we have got approval in principle from the Scottish Development Department for the environmental improvements contract, which will in fact follow on from your modernisation contract. Now we're likely to be letting putting this contract out to tender in January next year.
Your houses?
Yes, I've seen some of the back courts and they're pretty bad.
Have you seen the way the roads are subsiding? When you've got to walk in your clothes?
I've seen that,
Well, I'm bloody sure that you don't do it in your premises at the present time.
Now, I think what you're talking about a different thing here. You mentioned the back courts. That was the question I was answering first. Now, you've mentioned another point here, which is that probably the utility services have been in with new services. They've done a temporary reinstatement, which has subsided.
It's the virgin ground that's in there now. There's not even been a piece of tar put into it.
None of
them. Tar. It's not been even surfaced with tar.
Well, if it hasn't been, it should be.
Well, it hasn't been, and it's been like that for the last 11 weeks.
The close where I live, the back court is inaccessible. Impossible to get through. And it's been this for, something like 9 months.
I've been waiting to get my toilet fixed for the last February when they modernised the houses, and it's still no fixed, and I've got 4 veins.
I write 2 letters out to them and tell them what's happened. I go and see them after 3 months. I still don't get any satisfaction.
When the houses were getting modernised, they told me that fire was in perfect condition. There was nothing wrong with it. When I went to put it on tonight, I couldn't get it. It's just the cold air that's coming through. They've cut the grass off. I mean, £100 a hell of a lot of money to pay the new for a fire. Well, what are they going to do about that?
I can't get a window open. The windows haven't been repaired. I've got asthma, chronic asthma, and there's not a window. These people down the stair have no windows. There's other people here is the very same position.
He refused me no letter 2 weeks ago to get me air into the house for a wee girl that was dying. Between life or death she was, and my sons are here to prove it, and so is the neighbours here to prove it. She was prayed, I don't care what religion anybody is, she was prayed for in chapel, 4 weeks hard running, for life or death. I went to Mr. Campbell to see if he could open my windows, which I've been complaining since last April. Mr. Campbell told me I had to go through the channels.
It's all too easy to feel unsympathetic about people who seem to do nothing but complain when their homes are being modernised at considerable public cost. But what Lilybank was now experiencing was a new and profoundly humiliating form of deprivation, a lack of respect which perhaps wouldn't have applied if they'd been the ones who were actually paying the bills. They felt as though they had no status as human beings, even though they lived in the houses.
When I went into the house at first, the fire were nearly, they come up to my house and said we were an escape of gas. I put down a carpet, it cost me £200. The men said we need to lift the carpet to get underneath the floorboards to get a pipe. They feared that a gas escape was coming for a pipe underneath the floorboards. I told them, I said, well, if you lift that carpet, you'll pay me £200 for lifting it. Then they came and asked me, did I drive a nail through? And it might have punctured this thing. I asked the fellow, I said, do you think I'm daft? I paid £200 for a carpet and I'm going to drive a nail through it. I must think you're stupid.
All the way through the scheme, you had evidence all the time of the way in which these skilled tradesmen had a kind of contempt for the people with whom they were working. The way in which they used obscenities, language, that they would never dream of using in another part of the city, but they felt absolutely free there to be as rough and as careless as they liked.
Nothing but abuse you get off of Cuba. Nothing but abuse you get off of Cuba. Anybody gets up there to speak to Cuba, you get nothing but abuse. They've even sent the police to evict a man out of their yard. Now, this is all wrong.
There is a kind of comfortable convention in the rest of the world that if you're poor, then you've got used to it, and you're really not all that uncomfortable or unhappy about it. I question that now in a way I didn't before. I think that you are getting so many messages about being unimportant. You're constantly aware of it. I mean, I talked about the tradesmen, but it's not only the tradesmen. It's the whole network of local authority bureaucracy. It's the whole network of anybody who has a sense of being in a powerful position in relation to you.
I've had the architect in my house, I've had Mr Campbell, I've had these chaps up at the back here in my house, also Mr Wilson from Cubits. I've been nice to them, I've been cheeky to them and arrogant, because they are very arrogant people. Just anyone can come over and see my house. My ceilings are falling from one bit to the other, which this boy knows. That's the receipt from the corporation. I wrote in 4 letters recorded delivery. I gave this chap about 100 letters between Cubits and the corporation. Nothing's been done.
You and the gentleman at the table are answering all the questions. We've got 4 representatives from Cubits, who are the men on the site, who know all the answers offhand like that. We've not answered a question yet. Would it be possible for them to give us some answers?
Mr Chairman, could I ask the representative for Cubits a question here?
Excuse me just a minute.
This would be one. No one asks me a question.
Namely, Mr Morton here. Could I ask Mr Morton a question here?
Well, if you just excuse me a minute.
Thank you.
We're in an invidious position here that if anybody at the meeting wants to direct questions at the representative from Cubits, the corporation officials is quite within their rights to leave the meeting. Well, I don't know the reason for that. Now, wait a minute.
Give us a reason. Give us a reason. Give us a reason.
Well, that's just. No, I'm not evading. I'm not evading nobody. Well, could you twist the mood? Could you tell me the reason for that? You're a gentleman going to answer what I have to say.
They have to put it through the Glasgow Corporation. That's correct. Cubits don't handle your complaint unless you put it through a Glasgow Corporation. So therefore, I want to see Cubits. You're not allowed to see Cubit unless they put a complaint into Guinness.
Well, can I explain? Can you let me? Can I get a sentence in? Can I get a sentence in? I mean, I'm the chairman, right? The gentleman for the corporation is going to explain why Cubits can't be answerable. Well, in their presence, right?
When I go to make a complaint in regards to my house, I'll not go to the Glasgow Corporation Housing Management Department. I'll go to Cubit, and Cubit will take my complaint.
Well,
either that man there will tell me why Cubits can't answer my question.
By the way, I'm on your side.
I know.
Would you like to explain to these people why they've got to?
Ladies and gentlemen, as far as this contract is concerned, Glasgow District Council let this contract. The Glasgow District Council architects are responsible for this contract. That is why we are here this evening, to answer your queries as best we can. Now, your complaints should go to the District Council PRO, and they will be passed on to the contractor to be dealt with. And that is the system that's set up, and that's the system that we work to.
Apparently, it's District Council policy for the subcontractors not to be answerable, you see, but they're quite welcome to the meeting. But what we would like to hear, and we really want to hear it. Wait a minute, let me finish. Fair dues now. What we want to hear, and Cubit's representatives are there. Wait a minute, they're not allowed to come up. They're not allowed to come up. Because it's policy for the Strathclyde region. But let me finish, right? What we want is all the well, let me finish, please. What we want is for the Cubit's representatives to hear all the complaints so that they can take cognizance of the fact and then see what they do.
They should be up there. They should be up there along with that crowd. They shouldn't be sitting there back here. They should be up there and getting the questions answered the same way.
Mr. Chairman.
It's ridiculous, you know. We invited these gentlemen along. And I think it's only good manners for the people of Lilybank for you to direct their questions at them. Fire at them. Cubits at the back of the halls listening. That's irrelevant. At the next meeting, called shortly after in the new year, we'll invite the representative from Cubits, and with all respect, the management or the housing management won't be there.
Mr. Chairman, if I could say something might clarify some people's objection. There is a meeting arranged which takes place regularly between the District Council and the contractors. There is one due on Tuesday, so any points that you raise tonight will be getting raised with Cubits, just so that you realise that something will get done following this meeting.
I honestly believe that in the very near future in this area you'll see a big improvement. This is just the beginning of something in this area. You've now formed yourselves into an active body. You have the urban renewal project beginning to get off the ground, which will also have an effect in your area. There will be environmental improvements. Your homes will be improved, so that in the very near future I think you'll see big changes in the area. And although I'm not one of your own councillors, I'll give you whatever help I can in the future. Finally, I think that in fairness to the officials, you should accord them all a very warm vote of thanks for coming along on an evening like this.
So just what was the effect of that first public meeting? For the people of Lilybank, it was a sort of safety valve, I suppose, a way of letting off steam about their long-nurtured resentments. True, they had been patronised a bit, flannelled a bit, sidetracked not a little, and I suppose that the proceedings had been too chaotic to be properly effective, but that could be put down to lack of experience about holding public meetings of that kind. On the credit side, there had been a public relations officer there busily taking notes about individual complaints. There had been promises of a sympathetic hearing in the future. I think that the people of Lilybank felt that they really were beginning to achieve something. And above all, there was every hope that representatives of Cubits, the major contractors, who were consistently cast as the villains of the piece, Cubits would be there on the platform in person to answer the various complaints and allegations face to face.
But when they turned up for the second public meeting, there were no Cubits representatives on the platform. Instead, Cubits had sent a letter to the secretary, Mrs. Oakes, which a chairman read aloud.
Thank you for your invitation to the tenants' meeting on the 6th of January 1977. Right? We feel that, although most anxious to resolve any problems that may exist, it would be in the best interest of all concerned to meet at least once a week with your representatives during working hours. We trust you appreciate that to attend and participate in an open meeting could present contractual problems that are better avoided. I don't know what that means, but as intimated at the meeting on the 16th December 1976, all complaints must be directed through housing management, but you have our assurance that any matters of a critical nature will be attended to promptly. While we will continue our endeavours to meet your members' requirements, we would consider it a favour if the residents could help us on the question of vandalism. Progress is severely retarded when completed items are destroyed and have to be made good up to 6 times on occasions. Well, we'll come to the vandalism problem at the end of the meeting. Meanwhile, may we wish you every success with your association, assuring you of our very sincere cooperation. Yours sincerely, Mr. Hughes, the Director of Cubits.
We've came for nothing.
We've only got the letter.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The reason why Cubit can't attend here, they can't do nothing without the corporation say so. That is the reason why. They can't do nothing without the corporation. Correct. They're only contractor. They can't say to you, I'll do this and I'll do that without the corporation saying yes.
A contractual agreement.
Yes, that's why Cubit can't come here. It's a waste of time asking Cubit to come here.
We're in between the two of them now. We're in between the corporation and Cubits. We're fighting a battle alone. They're not, no, that's right. Because they're hiding too much. That's the reason they're not here tonight. So why should we not tell the truth? That is the truth. They're hiding everything.
The Cubits have been invited and they've chosen not to come. And I doubt very much if it's anything to do with contractual arrangements in this situation. Because I don't honestly think that the District Council could stop a contractor coming along to a meeting of tenants on their own if they really wanted to. And quite frankly, it astonishes me that a large construction company like this should refuse to come along and put their own point of view. Because they have some very highly paid public relations officers whose job it is to explain away and make excuses for anything that goes wrong and to sell the good points that the contractor may have. And it would appear to me, maybe I'm rather suspicious, as if they just don't want to come along and don't want to face you. And that, I think, is the only reason they're not here.
Thanks very much, Councillor.
There was considerable resentment that Cubits had refused to turn up, and eventually they had to settle for the promise of a weekly meeting between Cubits and a deputation from the Tenants Association.
Has refused to come.
And so the association turned its attention to the problem of vandalism. Vandalism is endemic nowadays in housing schemes. And ironically, the modernisation project apparently made Lilybank even more vulnerable to vandalism than ever before. When a house is being modernised, the tenants have to move elsewhere temporarily. They're decanted, as a bleak official jargon has it. And the longer a house lies empty, the greater the chance of it being vandalised.
Surely the Glasgow Corporation Housing Management Department must take some of the responsibility for this situation that we're arising at now. Now, the Housing Management Department are still issuing out leaflets today to people that are being decanted, telling you that the housing repairs will take from 3 to 5 weeks. Now, they know it's impossible for Cuba. Cuba has never repaired the house in that scheme under 9 weeks. And they're still issuing out these pamphlets. Why do they still how do they still issue out the pamphlets that it's taking 3 to 5 weeks when they know it's impossible to do it?
The anger seemed justified. Some of the residents of Lilybank have hair-raising stories to tell of what vandals did to their homes during their absence.
During the time I'm out, they're in there, in that window. I see the fact that says, keep your curtains up, Mr. Rutland. They're just new, split new curtains, these new curtains. And I goes and puts them back up again. They're just new up. I mean, when they got me, they set a fire to the room, my wardrobe. They couldn't get in the wardrobe. They made a big bonfire fire and brought me the wardrobe and set it on. All my clothes and my shoes, everything, my bed clothes, all in the wardrobe. The whole place was, they left that one, I'll tell you.
I lived above it, which is a rock, and it set fire to the place. And the place was overcome with smoke, and the lady up was there, tapped the door to wake me up. During the night it happened, and the smoke was pretty bad. We didn't know where the fire was coming from. It was either downstairs or my house at the time, and I was pregnant at the time. And I had a premature baby. She was only 3 pounds. She was born through it all. And she was in hospital 3 months after it. But everything turned out for the best for her now. She's all right now.
They took all my furniture away. Every stick in the house. When I come back, I hadn't even a cup to take a cup of tea. I was sitting just as this with this new milk with nothing. And it's a good job, so I saved up my pension to get what I got in the house now, or I would have had nothing.
I wouldn't like to live through that again. I really wouldn't.
Vandalism's a terrible thing in the East End. And if we're going to try and create a scheme here that's going to be worthy of our wains and our grandchildren, now's the time to start it. But they're building a new scheme up there, so if you see anybody doing anything that they shouldn't be doing, either write to the officials of the corporation or the committee. Would you please do that? Yes, sir.
It started in Glenshee Street, and there were a lot of thieving and vandalism going on. I tried to prevent it, but I very near got a knife in my back trying to prevent it.
That's right.
Whilst I agree with this, if everybody was community spirit minded, we would soon eliminate these people because they're just a wee cancer and they're growing. Let's eliminate them. The parents will be responsible for anybody causing any form of vandalism in that scheme. The parents, that means to say they'll be evicted.
Well, how is it there's some of them still in the scheme and have got
Because we haven't
really vandalised and getting away with it.
Any
and they're still
complaint.
kept in the bloody place.
If you see any form of vandalism, please write to the Housing Management at Parkhead Cross or any of the committee. I can assure you the person writing that letter will not be in any way victimised.
Well, we gave
The
them
name won't be disclosed, nothing will happen.
We gave them a row for
Bar
being
a
in the
vandals will be
close.
evicted.
We gave them a row for being in the close. My husband and I went down and checked him. 2 days after that, it's wrote all over the close. There's no wind in it. There's only children up the stair and children down the stair.
Well, if you can identify them and put your complaint in writing,
Well,
these
you go
people
along to
will be
78
evicted. We've got the assurance from
You
Mr.
go along to
Dowry.
78 Glenshee Street and you'll see it. It's writ all up the close,
Yes,
all up
dear.
the wall.
There in 86 Glenila Street. You can go
97.
down, no, 97. You can go down there the night and you'll find about 40 of them up it. I've put that to the committee.
And their names
There's
is
about
all on
40
it.
of them up it.
The ones that's doing it.
And there's 2 old women up the coast, they're frightened to open their mouth.
Because they were
their windows have
threatened.
been put in and they've been gluing their doors and they've walloped 20 of them.
That's right.
I put that to committee yesterday.
Well, Mr Gowrie has given the committee an assurance that any vandalism that is properly reported, that family will be evicted.
Oh, I don't know why the police can't cope. It's not we've brought the police out. The police has been out. When the police come, they're away. They take them in, didn't they? They take them in for what? Look at the cars. Every night a car was getting stolen and getting set on fire. I mean, you wouldn't like your car, would you? To sit outside your close and come back, and it's away setting fire, and you're going to look for it setting fire. Then sometimes a friend comes up to you, leaves their car at close, and go back down for it's away.
Vandalism went on the stairs. You know, the brass rods were set in to the new stairs that had been made in the modernisation process. And the children ripped these out before the concrete had set and rushed down to the local scrap dealer. Who is the vandal, I have to ask? You know, the man who took the brass and gave the kids money for it, or the kids who took the brass there knowing that they would get money, knowing that no adult was going to say to them, "That's terrible, you shouldn't have done that."
I'm a member of the school's council for truancy, right? Now I know for a fact that the whole of the east end of Glasgow, there's a school in Glasgow, get the highest truancy rate in Western Europe. I know that for a fact. Now I say to myself, what did they sniff glue for? What did they fly doors for? I've nothing else to do. You know what I mean? I mean, that might sound ludicrous, but they've nothing else to do. They dog school, where do they go? We're our pals, and Woolies and all this. I find it sad, but this is the element that will need to educate. Say, look, son, you need to stop sniffing this. It's no good for you. No, and I've spoke to them. I can't father them.
Well, the reason I think there's been so much trouble is because of the modernisation. I mean, we hadn't this before. We had a nude one fighting in the boys, but never this carry on. The houses went empty. I mean, me and 3 other women had to go and pray to empty houses. I had to get steel shutters put up in 97 Glenella Street. The woman in there, an old pensioner, was getting pulped by the throat, getting battered about when she came out. That woman to go out at 9 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night, terrorised. I mean, there's a lot of good tenants in here that is moving just through that. And if good tenants go, what's going to happen?
I had the feeling that the adults were frightened of the children, that they had abdicated any sense of personal power in relation to the children. That worried me very much, because I can't think of anything that's worse for a child than to feel that adults are afraid of them.
Some of the old folks in Lilybank have good reason to feel afraid. Old-age pensioner Lawrence MacDonagh was attacked in his own home by 2 teenagers from Lilybank. They beat him up savagely and tried to steal his wristwatch and television set. One of them got 4 years for it. But Mr. MacDonagh is left with a legacy of fear of all Lilybank youngsters.
I don't feel safe at all. I'm in the dread all the time. If I go outside and I walk, if I hear me behind my back, I'm still doubtful. Do you understand? See, there's a bad lot up here, there's a corner and then the next corner. I took my sister-in-law down to Greenfield about 2 years ago to a supper night in a Celtic club. She's got a lovely car. We come out with no car. They burnt the car to the ground here. And Methven, she has next to it along here. Burnt the